1, 2, test. Dear Dave comrades, how are we all doing? And welcome to a much delayed episode of the podcast, Politics, Culture and Some Other Shit. As always, like, share, subscribe, do the thing. And if you want to lend your support, you can do that over at Patreon for £1 a month. That's all. It helps me keep the lights on here at Super 8 Ecotronic, as you know. And plenty of you do that, so I really appreciate it. So there we go. That's that done. And yes, you can follow me over on Twitter, although I have since discovered that my account is basically repressed, shadow banned, whatever the words, whatever the phrase is, phraseology is. I'm not sure. I get absolutely no traction over there at all. And that happened quite suddenly. And I started noticing it, and then I did a little bit of digging, and it turns out I wasn't imagining things. So that's a bit of a shame. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I'll maybe start another account, try and get around it that way. Whatever. I really don't know. But yeah, but there we go. Isn't that the way of the world these days? So yeah, and I have an Instagram account as well. But again, it's just exactly the same, I suppose. I haven't checked that out. I don't use it much. I should maybe start using that more often. But anyway, let's not worry about it right now. Let's get to the thing. So what are we going to talk about? Lough Neagh. Talk about Spotify, a little bit about Israel. We're going to talk about Spotify because yesterday I was up at the Think Left conference up in Derry, up in St Colum's Hall, organised by some fantastic comrades, Paddy McNichol being among them. And I hope to get Paddy on the podcast soon as a guest. I've reached out to him. I'm waiting to hear back. He's one of the organisers of the Save Lough Neagh campaign. So I want to talk to him about that because there is been some developments which I'm going to touch upon today. And then, yeah, so I went up to this yesterday and it was fantastic. I was a part of a panel, actually, so you can see it there on the screen. By the way, anybody listening to this, there's a video of this on YouTube as well. And on Spotify, that's what do you call it? Fucking Patreon, sorry. So many things. So I was a member, I was on this panel, so you can see there on the screen, all these brilliant panels were put together. So there was a rally for Free Palestine. There's some speakers. I can't remember that guy's name, but I do know him. There's one. So me and Paddy Kearns, my people before profit comrade here in the town, we went up early for this one. So this is the Lough Changes Everything, the fight for nature and clean water, with Maeve O'Neill, Professor John Barry, and Padraig McNichol, who I hope to get to talk to very soon on the pod. So we went up early for that, and it was enlightening and infuriating and the same. And John Barry made all the speakers made great points, but one of the ones Professor John Barry made was about the link between ecocide and genocide. So what's happening here right now and what's happening in Palestine right now as well, they're all linked through our mutual friend colonialism. And he spoke about that a little, which was really, really good. And then I was on this panel. You can see it on the screen there. Mixing pop and politics. Myself from the Bonnevilles, Sean O'Lafferty from Tramp, Sean McKenna from the Mary Wallopers, Hannah Richardson from Cherryam, they're called the Cherryam, and Stuart Bailey, ex-editor of NME and co-founder of the OES Centre, among other things, and the Northern Ireland Music Prize and all that. So I was on that panel, and we got to talk about, just popping politics and about the protests, singing and things like that, and how you introduce these themes into your music. And it was really good. I enjoyed it. I think it was quite a good panel. I got the feedback I got was good anyway. So, I mean, these people are all adorable, and I'm not going to tell you it was shit, even if it was. And then now on Saturday, Lurgan's first ever Pride parade took place, and there's some photographs on the screen. It was a little small affair down one street, Carnegie Street, and there was a few events, and there was a few hundred people turned up, and it was, by all accounts, absolutely brilliant and successful. And I didn't get to go because I was gigging. I had a gig up in Belfast, so I couldn't make it, and I was raging. I really was. I really, really wanted to go to this. I volunteered to be a marshal for the day, and I was looking forward to making my contribution. And I couldn't. I had a gig. I have to make a living, people, so I couldn't do it. But by all accounts, it was fantastic. Congratulations to all, especially my comrade Paddy Cairns and my People Before Profit comrades who were instrumental in putting the whole thing together, really. Um, and as always, they do these things without shining a light on themselves. So I'll do it. I'll do it now. Well done, People Before Profit. If it wasn't for you, this wouldn't have happened, and all these lovely people wouldn't have gotten together. And the I can tell you that the stories that we've been getting, that we've been hearing, are absolutely heartwarming, to say the least. There was a guy, Paddy was telling me, he left Lurgan 37 years ago because of homophobic abuse and moved to London. And when he came back for the first time in 37 years to the Lurgan Pride for the first time. And isn't that wonderful? So there we go. And I will say this, there was online the usual abuse and nonsense that you expect, but it wasn't that much. The amount of arseholery versus the goodwill was it was significant and worth the effort for that reason alone, I would say. So I'm really proud of my comrades at People Before Profit for putting this together, being a part of the committee. Well, they were the instigators of it, and then they put the right people in the room, and then it was all organised by lovely folks. Yeah, brilliant. So proud of them. It was fantastic. I will not miss next year. That's a promise. And finally, before we get to the podcast, we have a gig. The Bonnevils are playing the 16th of November up at the Barn in Kelly's in Portrush. And we've got support from Hong Kong Nocturne and Hypnic Jerk. Hypnic Jerk is our pal Wally from Waldorf and Cannon and other things. And Hong Kong Nocturne, I believe, are a new band, I think. And they're members of Here Comes Atlanta Gentry. Oh, some members of that. So that's really cool. Delighted as a part of the Atlantic Sessions, and I can't wait. Look forward to seeing our friends up in the north coast again. And just on other Bonneville's news, we're finally booked into the studio to record our new album. You know that we played Belfast on Saturday there. As I said, I had to go and, earn some dollar. And I think we played 4 new songs. Let me just, why is it, oh my god, this is terrible. Let me just get these dates to see when we're going in. Is this, no. No, it's not in my calendar. I don't even know when it is. The middle of October anyway. We're going into the studio for a week. Into Maggie's there up at Tree Song Studios up in Ballinderry. I can't wait. And Joseph Thomas going to be playing some keys for us. And Mikey's going to be doing his usual Mikey magic. And it's going to be brilliant. I can't wait. So, let's get to it. To the pod. What are we going to start with? We're going to start with Spotify. And let me just get this. I've so many browsers opened, it's unreal. So the reason I'm starting with this is because there was a young lady asked a question and I answered it. I think she was looking at me, so I answered it. And I do have a very strong opinion about the subject. And this was yesterday at the Think Left conference, and she at the end of it she handed me a note with her email address on it, and I've got that, and I'm going to reply to you. So thank you very much for that. Um, and it was basically, I can't remember exactly what the question was, but we were talking about organising and getting musicians organised against things, and Spotify was brought into it and into the equation. And my answer basically went along the line of um, we all know what the problem is with Spotify. So there's an article there, why do so many musicians hate Spotify? And I'll read briefly from it. Um, Spotify was the first big player on the streaming scene. So everyone's fears and anxieties about streaming fell on them. So that's an answer to the question: why does everybody hate Spotify? Because they're the first, and they're also by far and away the biggest. But r- in, rather than that being the exclusive answer, the real answer lies behind the royalties and the payouts, which are paltry. Spotify, here reading from the article, low payouts. Spotify also got bashed for its low payouts per stream. Every month, Spotify takes in a certain amount of money, then they divvy up 70% of the money received among all the artists who have been streamed that month. The amount can vary from artist to artist depending on the kind of deal they have with the service. Spotify, they claim they pay out between 0.006 and 0.0084 per stream, but some indie artists have said they make less than that. And then onwards into the article, one reason major labels can get by with a lower payout per stream is that they also get paid from the licensing. So, if you don't know this, the music industry, the way a song is divvied up among all the different publishing, licensing, recording, play, all the different revenue streams, it's very, very complicated. And the young lady that asked the question yesterday was saying, well, could artists not take their music down from Spotify? And part of my answer, I said, it's very difficult. It's actually much more difficult than you expect. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. And also, if you're an artist with a record contract, you've signed that stuff away. You're not really going to be able to do that because the record label's not going to let you do that as much as you might want to do it. And we'll get into beyond the payment. There's other issues. There's also other issues as to why you wouldn't want your music on Spotify. We'll get that in a second. And then on another paragraph in the article, I'm not reading you the whole article, I'm just sort of skimming it. And while Spotify and other streaming services do discover and promote acts without being directly paid for it, indie acts are at a great disadvantage compared to major label acts. So this is where pretty much everybody on this panel would fit that descriptor. Billboard journalist Glenn Peoples reported that popular playlists can and have been bought. So there's good news and bad news for smaller acts when it comes to Spotify. Just like in the days before streaming, the music industry had winners and losers and some in between. That hasn't changed and probably won't change. So payola is where you paid is the old system from the 1950s where managers and record labels would pay DJs to play their music. And he said, well, if you think there's nothing wrong with that, then what it does is it creates an unfair playing field. Then the more money that you have, the more you can pay, and you can sort of guarantee your success, really, through bunging money at a thing or a person or whatever. So it's not it's terrible. So onwards, streaming versus the record labels. Singer songwriter Katie Shaw feels the real problem isn't streaming, it's record labels. The way the profit is distributed has more to do with the people releasing the song and less to do with who's streaming it. Who owns the master? Who owns the publishing? I'm in a great position because the money isn't being split too many ways. My label is me and one other person. So when the money comes in, it goes straight to us. And there's a lot of that now. There's a lot more of that going on. So there you go. So basically, everybody does really hate Spotify. But that the very frustrating thing is, it is a really, really good service. It's brilliant. It's good at what it does. And it's unrealistic for us musicians to expect people to not use it. If it was shit, I would be wagging my finger at you and encouraging you to stop using it and wondering why you're using it in the first instance. But it's not. It's really good, and they all are, But I've used them all. I've gone through them all. I use Tidal now. Me and Chris use Tidal, and I've used Deezer, and I've used YouTube Music. I've used Apple Music, and Spotify is the best. There's no doubt about it. The recommended tracks and the way the algorithm recommends tracks after you finish the track, and it just plays the track radio and stuff like that. It's although the other apps do have that same service. So I think Spotify's is the best in my experience anyway. But everyone does hate it, and it's because of money. So all these other reasons about it being the first and being the biggest, it's not the reason. The reason is because of the splits. You see how many streams you get, and you're not getting paid. And you say, well, you're getting exposure. Well, you can't eat exposure. You need somebody to put their hand in their pocket and take some money out and put it into your bank account. That's the way this works. And if Spotify is the one that's being relied upon to do that, we're all going to fucking starve to death really soon. You can see the numbers from big famous artists who get millions of streams, and then they'll share, we got 300 quid for this. And it's like, that's not fair. That's just not fair. So that's why. Now, if you Google it, my answer, the Musicians Union should develop an alternative to Spotify. That was my answer from the question yesterday. And then if you Google it, and there's the Google search, Musicians Union challenges Spotify to raise royalties, music industry, and there's very little. Why has the Musicians Union UK declined at whatever? I don't even know. So if you Google Musicians Union and Spotify, there's not much really, right? A few wee things. But that was my answer. So although we know what the problem is, we do need to present solutions. We're very good at pointing out problems without thinking about realistic solutions. And the answer that I gave was I played a gig on Saturday, and I was talking with Vic, the sound guy, about how well the dock workers strike in America had gone, and that within the space of a day and a half, they had basically negotiated themselves a $65 an hour pay raise over 6 years. So there was another guy in the room, an employee of the place. I'm not going to name him or shame him, it's his own opinion, but he gave a really particularly shitty answer, and it was, well, why don't they just start their own transport company? Which is a capitalist tropey answer. Why don't you just start your own, whatever, A, B, C? But in this case, it's actually a legitimate answer when you apply it to Spotify. Why doesn't the Musicians Union develop an alternative to Spotify? Then pay out more equitable splits in royalties. Then us musicians can realistically encourage you to not use Spotify. And then what would happen is, because the Musicians Union is doing this and people are migrating to Spotify, we wouldn't release our music on Spotify. We would just release it to the Musicians Union service. And then Spotify would then be forced by what they're capitalists, aren't they? They're forced by the market to change their payout practices, because that's what the market would dictate. Do you get what I'm saying? So the monopolistic practices of these services don't they don't encourage what the capitalists would calls, the free hand of the market and true capitalism. What it does is screw the worker, in this case, the musicians. So the solution for me, and Spotify is the only game in town. It really is. Um, Streaming services is the only game in town. It's not going away. It's not going to stop. So we have to figure out a workaround. And the workaround is to develop our own service. But I can't do it, but the Musicians Union could do it. Now, the Musicians Union, there's their website. It's £21 a month. If you have student memberships, is different, and join for £1 for the first 6 days, disabled musicians and all that sort of stuff. But for me, it's £21 a month. I'm not giving them £21 a month. I don't know what they do. I literally don't know what they do. I'm sure they do stuff. But for me, it's like they're asleep at the wheel with this one, because the big story is Spotify and the streaming services, and they're not doing anything realistic to combat them, because they're going to have to go to war with these people. But they're not going to. They're not doing it, and they're not going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it. But for me, that was the natural solution, was to look to someone like, or the PRS or someone like that, to go and build a competitor to Spotify that will then pay a more equitable share of the payouts, and we will then encourage you all to not use Spotify, and that would be the way to go around it. There is another thing that does exist actually at the minute is Bandcamp. Bandcamp is really, really good, but it has been bought out by, so I think, is it Spotify that they bought them out? I'm not sure, so I don't know what way that's going to go. But they are good for us, but their apps aren't great, and that's the other thing as well. The functionality and usability of their product isn't. It's great, but it's good, but it's not great. Right? Let me put it that way. And if they did that as well, if they just went and built basically a competitor to Spotify that works like Spotify, they could be onto something there. But so I think what we need to do is maybe start some sort of a mailing campaign or some sort of a petition. Maybe I could do that. Maybe I should do that. To encourage organisations like the Musicians Union and PRS, etc., to develop an alternative to Spotify, to try and get around the behemoth that is Spotify. And then finally on this, one of the reasons why, and this was brought up yesterday at the meeting as well, one of the reasons that we all hate Spotify, and this is where everything gets into the weeds and out really murk. Like when you're trying to make your ethical decisions in your purchases, and you think you're buying a streaming service that streams music, and then you find out how Spotify is quietly supporting the military industrial complex. Unbeknownst to most users, Spotify has a secret endeavour backing the efforts of war. In the music streaming wars, no one wins. Joe Rogan may have made many misleading, racist, transphobic comments on his podcast, but his language isn't the only battle being fought on the streaming audio service. As we know, Joe Rogan Experience was bought over, exclusively licensed to Spotify a couple of years ago, but it's not doing that anymore. I think you can get it in other places now. Unbeknownst to most users, Spotify has a secret endeavour, the support of the military-industrial complex. In 2021, it was announced that Spotify co-founder and CEO Daniel X invest, and I particularly despise this individual, investment company Prima Materia had invested €100 million in Helsing, an artificial intelligence company based out of Europe that assists in military technological ventures. Helsing's AI technology is reported to assist with battlefield operations, helping to identify and assess multiple collected forms of data via sensors in order to assemble a picturesque viewpoint which military agents could then use at their discretion. And this technology is being used today in Palestine. So they're gathering up. They've got AI-assisted drones that are targeting uh, Palestinians. And this is where our money from Spotify. And then you say, well, if you go to someone else, they're just going to, yeah, they're probably going to be as bad. So I don't know what the answer is, other than develop our own with an ethical humanity. What's the word I'm looking for? An ethical platform with our humanity at the core of it, that we can pay our subscription to this service without being wondering whether the money's being hoovered up and reinvested in the military industrial complex to bomb children in tents. It doesn't sound like too much to ask, but it really fucking is. So there we go. There's the Spotify. There was a little thing I found on Reddit as well. Musicians Union launches Justice at Spotify campaign. Yeah, just build the fucking app. So there we go. That's that. That's the Spotify story. It's mad, isn't it? Yeah, it's mad. It's really unfair. It's horrible. So, onwards, we're going to talk a little bit about the Lough. Now, I never got my article up. Let me see if I can just find it. Give me 1 second until I. Because I've written a couple of I've been asked to write a couple of articles for the Lurgan Grapevine. So, a fella here in the town called Gordy Hamill has a website called the Lurgan Grapevine. And do that. So he asked me, could I be in a campaigner involved with the Lough story? He asked me, could I, sorry, give me 1 second. Just 1 second, please. I'm back. So he's asked me to write a couple of articles, weekly blog report, on what the goings on in Lough Neagh, me being involved with the campaign, and I've become sort of, I'm becoming known about that around here. People are identifying that with me, which is fine. There are other people that are much better qualified, like Paddy McNichol, who I will be talking to, hopefully soon. Much better qualified than me to talk and to give you the information. But I will play my part so long as I am asked. So I wrote this article, so I'm going to read this to you, and then we're going to get into it. It's about, the article is titled, it's very short, it's about the money stupid. So, although at first glance, the allocation of almost £500,000 to 5 companies to develop proof of concepts that treat and reduce and suppress algal growth may sound like a lot of money, and it is only the first step in the Minister's first much vaunted 37-point plan. It is in fact a disaster. It's clear to all that the government is intent on finding a solution, only so long as it doesn't interfere with the business of pumping millions of tonnes of trade effluent and raw sewage into our lough. DAERA, the Department of Agriculture, Environmental and Rural Affairs, said the bidders cover several areas, including use of ultrasonics, mechanical treatment, and biological treatment. I knew the department would go down this route on day one, as did many of the other campaigners, which means that in the timeline of events needed to heal our lough, we haven't yet reached the start line. Minister Muir's refusal to declare this an emergency is staggering. The evidence is as clear as the nose on his face that we need to stop pumping all our rubbish into the loch. Simple. I know people don't want to hear this as it drags us into the weeds of ideology. Now, bear in mind, I'm talking to a normie audience, not to my lovely Marxist friends on the podcast. This is me addressing, you know, the civilian population. I know people don't want to hear this as it drags us into the weeds of ideology, but I'm going to have to say it, dear reader. The capitalist solution to a problem caused by a capitalist practice is no solution at all. And I'm not trying to batter anyone with politics, but please hear me out. In economics, there's a thing called externalities. An externality is an indirect effect of an economic transaction that affects people who are not directly involved in the transaction. In regards to Lough Neagh, that externality is the pollution that is being dumped in the pursuit of profits, and in our case, the pollution is a negative externality. And we are the ones being directly affected despite not being directly involved in the transaction. So there's a little bit of basic Marxist economics for you. One of the questions we campaigners get asked often is, do we lose jobs if we don't pollute? Well, if it's jobs versus ecocide, if it's jobs versus not being able to drink the water, the literal source of life on Earth, then it's an easy decision. But I also say it's a false dichotomy. Not only do we not need to lose a single job, I say we can create even more jobs. We can create jobs cleaning the trade effluent before it's pumped and dumped, more jobs in the management of the loch in future and the clean-up in the present, more jobs for the fishermen, because the water will be clean and managed correctly, so therefore more fish to be caught. More jobs for the sand dredgers who can be retrained to take on the tasks of daily management. But who will pay? Well, an example I would use would be the billion-dollar company Pilgrim's Pride that owns my park. They could take a tiny percentage of its enormous profits that it offshores in tax havens and use them to employ people to clean its effluent before it reaches our waterways, therefore creating even more jobs. But it won't do this voluntarily. They will need to be forced into it by our political class instead of letting them away with their crime of ecocide. But rather than do what is obvious, the minister hands £45,000, and this is true, to a company whose proposal is to see if the algae can be turned into food and face cream. If this ridiculous idea grows wings, we may as well accept eel fishing on Lough Neagh is consigned to the dustbin of history, and our new use for Lough Neagh is to harvest cyanobacteria for Pilgrim's Pride cyanoburgers. For that is what is going to happen. So that was the article that has yet to be published. That's just, you've got an exclusive on that. So there's the BBC article, £450,000 allocated to tackle Lough Neagh algae. And this has come, who are the 5 suppliers? These are, and the problem that we have here is this. If you've been following this podcast, you'll know that I call this from day one. You know, I did a little expose on Andrew Muir's politics the very week that he was appointed. And I figured out from understanding his ideology that he's not going to fix this. And this is the problem with a liberal is a capitalist. They're capitalists. They're not socialists. They're capitalists. And if you're a capitalist, under modern neoliberal capitalism, the solution to a problem is always to hand a private company millions and sometimes billions of taxpayers' money to build something, to make a machine, to build a product, to do something that can then be bought and sold. That's always their solution. That's always their go-to. It's the way they think. What we need to do, as I addressed in the article, is stop pumping the crap into the loch. It's simple. Stop giving the algae its source of food, which is what the phosphates, etc., and other um, minerals are for the algae. That's why it blooms. That's why it grows so out of control. This is an ecosystem in an imbalance, and this is what happens. Remove the phosphates, the ecosystem will go back to balance, and algae lives in it, but it won't bloom and it won't kill anybody. But the liberal mind is incapable doesn't think like that, because they're going to have to go and upset business. So they then go to the corporations that are pumping their product, the effluent, the waste of their product into the loch. Now, that's what is called an externality, a negative externality. We're not involved in the transaction, but we are left with the product, the byproduct of the transaction, which in this case is a destroyed ecosystem. It's rather serious, wouldn't you say? I know I certainly would. So, another example of this would be Keir Starmer has recently announced 22 billion to be given to a company to build carbon capture technology. Basically, they're going to drill down into the core of the earth and pump the carbon that they capture from factories, or I don't know where this stuff's coming from, the atmosphere somehow, and they're going to pump it into the earth. Now, this technology doesn't exist, and it hasn't been proven to work. But there is a technology that does exist and it does work. It's called a tree. That's what a tree is. It's a carbon capture device, for want of other uses. But that's one of its main ones. When Jeremy Corbyn was running for election, he promised to plant 2 billion trees across the United Kingdom. And he was called and pilloried as a communist for having such a wild idea. This project was going to cost £2.5 billion, and it was going to work. Trees also act as flood defences. They also stop topsoil erosion, and they provide, and they are an ecosystem unto themselves, providing cover, food, shelter for all manner of wildlife. And they're also a world-class carbon capture device. And all you have to do is leave them alone, and they'll do it, because it's what they do. Instead, we're going to give 10 times that amount of money to some company to develop a product that isn't going to fucking work. And this is why Andrew Muir's solutions are throw money at these 5 companies you can see on the screen there to build a machine to go. Professor John was John Barry, was it yesterday at the Lough Neagh panel at the Think Left conference in St Colum's Hall in Derry that I was at yesterday. He talked a bit about this, and he said this technology doesn't work. And we were at the first meeting of the Save the Lough campaign was held in Balahi in the Seamus Heaney home place last year, and me and Janie, my wife, we went to it. And one of the contributors was an English fella, and he was from a private corporation that claimed that they have these sonic or lights, ultraviolet lights or something like this technology that will kill, that will sort out the algae. But the problem with all these solutions, including the one that I said in the article that I read to you, that I wrote, that there is one of these companies is going to look into turning the algae into a food or a face cream product. This is real. That's a real thing. They got 45 grand off the minister to do that research. But the problem that we have with the loch, with regards to the technology, the loch is huge. And Any of this technology that exists only exists in the sense that it works in small ponds and things, little lakes. The lake's 370 square kilometres. It's enormous. Suppose you could say, well, you could scale a technology up. Well, maybe you could, but it hasn't been done yet. And anywhere from past experience, we know this stuff. They're going to fuck this up. This doesn't work. And then, most importantly, and this is the issue of the matter, it's not dealing with the source of the problem. The source of the problem is the pumping of the phosphates into the water in the first instance. And if we end up with the food and the face cream products as the solution, not only are we not going to stop pumping phosphates in, we're going to be encouraged to pump more in to make more fucking cyano burgers or whatever the fuck it is they have in mind. Do you get what I'm saying? And this is what the fucking liberal mindset can't do. The liberal mindset cannot go to my park and say, sorry guys, you're going to have to go and fix this problem. We can't just keep letting you dump your shit into the water. You're going to have to pay for it. You're going to have to pay for it because the liberal is a capitalist. And a capitalist doesn't look to business to do that. They say they do. They say, we're, business, let business. No, what they want to do is just empty the taxpayer's bank account into private hands. All the while degrading the state and all the things of the state that the working class, which is the majority of people, rely upon to have safety, security, health, and lack of stress in your life. But that's not what the capitalist mind isn't capable of thinking of that. So that's why it's clear to me and others from day one that Minister Muir was never going to be able to do this. He was never going to do it correctly because he was always going to have to go to the capitalists and tell them, you can't keep doing this. We're going to stop you. You feel me? You feel me, bruv? So here's the article. We'll just finish with this. A company which has been handed the government grant to try and solve, this is in the Belfast newsletter, the problem of the blue-green algae in Lough Neagh, says that the toxic bacteria actually has some useful applications, and this is staggering. Varicon Aqua Solutions Limited is one of 5 groups to have shared in a £450,000 pot of cash parcelled out by the Department of Agriculture, Enterprise and Rural Affairs, DAERA, this week in order to conjure up some workable ways to combat the infestation. Infestation? As you say, it's like a plague of locusts that just come out of the desert out of nowhere. You can't figure out why. We don't know what we did. I don't know. Everything was fine, and then this stuff turned up. It's not. This is not an infestation. We've known that this was going to happen for 50 fucking years. Jim Searle from Varicon said, once captured and processed, a substance called phycocyanin, I think that's pronounced correctly, looks right, can be extracted. This is used as a food pigment and in skincare items. The blue-green algae blooms, which are plaguing the loch, rely in part on phosphorus. Mr. Searle, would you hear this? Mr. Searle said if you simply kill the blue-green algae, more properly known as cyanobacteria, then the phosphorus, which is the problem, is still in the system because you sank it down to the bottom of the lake. Instead, we're working out how to harvest it, probably using some kind of barge. We're taking it out of the system and essentially trying to get the value added out of the algae itself. Right. So there's a point now. See, the life cycle of the algae. It's the phosphorus and the other food basically for the algae. The cyanobacteria gets pumped into the loch, creating an abundance of foodstuffs. We get the blooms. The blooms float to the surface. They photosynthesize like a plant. The sun. That's why they're floating up to get closer to the sun. They and then when they multiply. Then they sink to the bottom. Then they die off. Then in the die off, Decomposition uses up oxygen. It creates dead zones within of low oxygen dead zones within the water itself, which of course the fish, etc., rely upon. Then the fish die. Then the birds don't have food. Then the birds die, and this is the cycle. Now, in the die off, the phosphorus is still in the system, so the man is correct. So if we say what we're going to do is scoop up all the algae and then we're going to go and process it, that sounds easy enough. Sounds like it might be a good idea even. The problem is not that scooping it up and taking it away and using it for something else is in itself a particularly bad idea. The problem is the motivations and the ethics of the people that are behind the system. So at the top, we've got the minister, who's not going to tell the companies to stop pumping shit into the loch. And at the other end of the fucking the procedures, process, system is a private company that is going to be encouraging more shit to be pumped into the loch so they can create more algae so that they can scoop it out and turn it into whatever it is they want to so they can sell it. So let's say, for example, they managed to scoop all this out of the loch and turn it into product. Are they not going to then encourage go to government and then do what private companies do to government? Bribe? We've seen what's been going on with the Labour government recently. Offer bribes, and their bribes, don't call them anything else. They're not contributions, as they've been called. They're bribes to get what they want. And what do they want? They want the product that they've come to rely on to be readily available. Exactly the same as what the sand dredgers are doing. Exactly the same as what the fisheries have been doing. Exactly the same as what the industrial farms and the agri-businesses around the loch have been doing. They've got a thing there that they can extract from, and pumping your waste product into the loch without having to pay a price for it is extraction. Although you're putting something in, it's technically extraction, right? So this is just another company that's going to be dependent and reliant upon the eco side of Lough Neagh to continue in order for it to continue. Do you get what I'm saying? You see, and this all comes from the mindset of the capitalist who is incapable of going to the root of the problem and dealing with it, because they're going to have to go and upset business. But as we socialists are screaming from the rooftops, we don't need to lose jobs. We can create jobs. We can create new jobs, better jobs, more sustainable jobs, because this system that's in place is not sustainable. This is going to have to end. This cannot continue. We cannot. There's going to come, we, you, me, we have reached the tipping point. But there's going to come a point where we cannot do this anymore. It's going to be obvious to everyone. And then what's going to happen? Is the capitalist going to step up and clean it and fix it? No. They're going to expect you to pay for it. And what are they going to do? I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're going to move. Because that's what they do. Capitalism started in England and the Netherlands. And then they pulled all the people out from the countryside into the cities, creating the slums, and they pulled them off the farms and turned them into serfs, turned them from serfs into workers, which is just another form of serf. And then it moved to the Americas, and then it was big in America and the factories, and they destroyed the ecosystems over there. Then they moved to the Far East. That's what it does. It moves, and it's like a swarm of locusts, to mention them for the second time today, leaving behind it devastation everywhere it goes. So I'm telling you that this is what's going to happen here. And I feel confident in making that prediction because it's happened 100,000 times before in other parts of the world. And we know what's going to happen. So why are we stalling? because within the system, there's the inevitability of the system is going to determine that this is what's going to happen. They're going to extract, and squeeze until there's nothing left, and then they're going to leave. I promise you, that's what's going to happen. I promise you that that's what's going to happen. Or we can work towards a more sustainable, environmentally friendly system of food production. 80% of all our food produced in the north of Ireland is all exported. So our ecosystem is being sacrificed so that other people can have food. And I get it, other people need food. What is that food? Of all the food that's exported, most of it, I don't know what the percentage is, but the most of it is used in processed foods. So value added, they call it value added product. So they take a chicken, cover it in something else, and then put it in a plastic thing, and then they sell it to you, and you heat it up in the microwave. It's a value added product. So that's what it is. It's used to go and create shit food that makes you sick. And it's all exported elsewhere. As Dr. John Barry reminded us yesterday, we're now food insecure because although we produce lots of beef and dairy product, we don't produce enough fruit and vegetables for ourselves. On this island where we could easily grow enough food to feed ourselves. Easily. And I get it. I understand how international trade works. You need exports. But you don't need to be exporting 80% of your product, of your food product, in order to turn it into value-added products to go into freezers in supermarkets. And by the way, and then when they're resold, those companies do what? Offshore their taxes. So they're not paying their taxes. It's just the worker that pays their taxes. It's not the company that pays their taxes. But it's the company that's making the decisions that the worker is being left to fix through the use of their taxes. Is going to have to pay to clean this up. And it's going to be us that's going to have to pay for this eventually. That's what's going to happen unless we change our ways. It's as simple as that. So there we go. I've waffled enough. It's a bit of a shame. It's a huge shame. And these solutions that are being offered they're not solutions. They're fucking ridiculous. And Minister Muir isn't going to fix this. I called it from day one. I said it from day one. I knew it. I had to have the evidence in that podcast. I said he wasn't going to do it. And it's becoming clearer and clearer as time goes on. It's a waste of fucking skin. So, onwards. How long have we been going? 52 minutes. Okay, that's quite good for me, isn't it? Dear listener, dear viewer. So, let's get to this story. And it's something that I haven't covered much, simply because of the enormity of it. Because it's clear to all what's going on. And quite frankly, it's rather disturbing. And I hate thinking about it. My Twitter feed is like a horror movie. And this is obviously what Israel is doing. So Israel, as you know, is out of control. They're a mad dog. They're a psychopath. Zionism is the new Nazism. And the weird thing is we can't even get our so-called leaders, most of them anyway, the vast, vast majority of them, to condemn Israel for what they are. A genocidal, out of control, psychopathic regime. It's a psychopathic ideology. Always was. And there's no goodness in it at all. And for over 70 years, 75 years now, 77 years, something like that, the Palestinian people have been enduring apartheid, and now, whilst all the while being called anti-Semites, which is hilarious, considering that they're actually Semites. And Benjamin Milikowski, you might know him better as Benjamin Netanyahu, whose DNA is from Poland. Did you know that DNA tests are legal in Israel? Why do you think that might be? Think about that. It's a good one, isn't it? Think about that. Why is a DNA test illegal in Israel? Yeah, for the reason that you think. Everyone will fucking find out that they're not from there. They know already. Load of bollocks. Right, so here's Al Jazeera. And yes, obviously today is the anniversary of October the 7th, which was the excuse used by the Zionist regime to conduct this fucking year-long atrocity on its neighbours. By the way, can I say this before we get into this? Do you know what blows my fucking mind? You know that we've had a rise of the right and the fash and all stuff in Ireland recently, going after immigrants and refugees, etc. The inability of these fucking dickheads to draw the link between war and immigration, war and refugees, is staggering to me. That they haven't yet, what's going on in there? What the fuck is actually going on in there? They hate fucking Muslims. They're pro-Israel. They're waving their Israeli flags, but they want to sink the boats in the English Channel or wherever it is that they. It's fuckwittery at its finest. It really is. It always blows my mind. I just like, you don't want refugees. You don't. Well, stop fucking blowing people up. And I said this to Paddy Kearns yesterday, and here I'm going to give you this one. This is one for you as well. You can take this with you, and please use it. Whenever you're having your discussions with your racist uncle, or if you happen to get a debate out of one of these fash types, and they go on about these ones coming here to steal our jobs, these ones coming here to steal our women, these ones coming here to do this and do whatever, they're coming here for our benefit system, because we all live like kings on fucking £80 a week. Or other such nonsense, or they go, they come here because we're a better country and they're leaving their shithole of a country or whatever the argument is. Tell them this. Tell them you can prove that those people don't want to come here with a little thought experiment, and you can do it right now. And this is what it is. Those people, I can prove to you that those people don't want to be here. And they'll go, why? How can you do that? Because until we started bombing them, they didn't come. They weren't here. The place wasn't full of Libyans and Syrians, and now the Lebanese are coming into Europe through Turkey. 1 million of them have fled because Israel is bombing. And these Lebanese are going to be turning up, the poor bedraggled masses. God love them, because Israel has bombed the shit out of them, and they've nowhere else to fucking go. And then these dickheads that we've got, the Kulak Says No crowd and the loyalists in Belfast and everywhere else, are going to be saying, we don't want these fucking refugees, but we back Israel. Are you done? Are you a dunce? Are you a dunce? So there's your answer. Because until we bombed them, they didn't come. Why the fuck does that? Do you know what Lebanon's a paradise? It's a Mediterranean paradise with an ancient culture, food, language, art, everything. When it's left alone, when Israel isn't dropping American and British and French and German bombs on it, what the fuck do they want to come and live in Portadown for? Have a word. Have a fucking word. So that's my point. So there's your little, for your debate with your racist uncle. That's what you can say. Until we bombed them, they never came here. And because Israel's bombing them, they're our ally. Now they're our fucking responsibility. And you're right, we don't have enough housing for them. You're right, the NHS is shit. You're right. Cost of living's going through the fucking roof. You're right. We can't look after them. That's why they're all living in fucking tents in Dublin, because we can't fucking look after them. But we're fucking doing our best to create as many of them as possible. And until we blew them up, they never came. So, here's the Al Jazeera. By the way, if you go on aljazeera.com, they have live updates from what Israel is getting up to at the minute. It's a live ticker. So this, I just want to refresh this because I loaded this in an hour or two ago. See, people text me ages to get these together. You just don't have any clue. Don't ask again. Block. Right. Live updates: Hamas and Hezbollah fire rockets at Israel on October 7th anniversary. That's today. So this is live. This is right now. We are 3:10, Monday the 7th of October. Hamas fires a volley of rockets at Tel Aviv on the 1 year anniversary of October the 7th, with Israelis holding memorials to mourn the victims of the deadly assault. The victims of which, by the way, they killed the most of them. That's going to come out. It already has come out, but it's going to be, that one's going into the history books. They did the worst of the damage. They did it with their Apache helicopters and their tanks. They did it. Hamas did kill people. Absolutely. They contributed. The most of the people were killed by Israel. I guarantee it. Large explosions can rock southern Beirut as Israeli forces continue to pound the Lebanese capital, while at least 10 people were wounded in the Israeli city of Haifa following a Hezbollah rocket attack. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel is changing security reality in the region. Now, you have to understand this, people. This is what we're facing. Couple of little things for you. Why is Hezbollah a militia? And you often hear it said in the media, legacy media, mainstream media, whatever you want to call it, Iranian-backed Hezbollah, right? Why are they based in Lebanon? Why is such an enormous force of 40,000, 50,000 highly trained individuals, the proper army, with missiles and rockets and all the things that armies have? I don't have an air force or navy or anything like that, but why are they allowed to exist in southern Lebanon? Well, the reason is, and why does the Lebanese army, this is just updated, see that in that class 23 seconds ago, why does the Lebanese army not stop this militia, this proscribed as a terrorist organisation by the UK government? Why does the Lebanese army not let them exist? Well, the Lebanese army isn't a real proper army. Under the terms, was it? I can't remember when, but basically the Yanks, the Brits, and all the other Western colonizers made Lebanon unable to have an army. They're not allowed to have an army, right? Other than an army in name only, and they have small weapons to deal with domestic uprisings and things like that. But to take on the likes of Israel, no. And that's why, because they don't want them to be able to do that. So Hezbollah arrives on the scene, and that's why they're Iranian. That's why you always say Iranian backed. By the way, they never say US backed Israel. They always say Iranian backed Hezbollah. So that's why Hezbollah, a militia, exist, right? In order to stop Israel taking over Lebanon. Why does Israel want to take over Lebanon? Because the Zionist project is not about Israel, it's about Greater Israel. Greater Israel is that whole region, all the way up to the Euphrates in Iran and the Nile in Egypt. That whole area. I have a picture of it somewhere. I'll show you it here. There it is on screen. So there's the idea of Greater Israel. So can you see that? No. Let me just... There. You got it there. So you can see on the screen there, and those of you that aren't listening or that aren't watching, you can see it. It's a big blue area. And so that down here in Egypt, this is the Euphrates, and up here in Iraq is Iraq, Syria. This is the Euphrates River here, and then down here is the Nile. And that's the Greater Israeli idea. And that's why they want to go into Lebanon and then Syria and etc. Right? Now, although they deny it, Israeli, then, if you say this, you're called, of course, you're called an anti-Semite if you say this. But Yasser Arafat and other Arab leaders have said that the Israeli flag is the Star of David, and then the two blue lines. There's a blue line at the top and the blue line at the bottom, and those lines represent the Euphrates and the Nile. So they say, the Zionists say that's not true, and you're fucking racist if you say it. But lots of Arab leaders believe it, and watching Israel, if it isn't true, it's fucking don't see why it wouldn't be. You know, it seems to be what they're trying to do. So that's why Hezbollah exists in southern Lebanon, to stop Israel invading Lebanon and taking it over, and in the expansionist occupier colonialist project known as Zionism and Greater Israel. Right. So there you go. So here's the updates from. I'll just read these headlines. Tokyo police move to disperse protesters near Israeli embassy. Videos circulating on social media show clashes between Japanese security forces and demonstrators who gathered in front of the Israeli embassy in Tokyo to protest the onslaught in Gaza. And there's the video footage of it. So there's the protesters in Japan. So there we go. And then there's more footage. Police blocking the angry protesters from reaching the embassy. So there you go. It's all happening. Netanyahu says Israel is changing security region reality. We are changing the security reality in our region for the sake of our children, for the sake of our future, to ensure what happened on October the 7th. It's disgusting. And then he says never again. Oh my God. He says never again, as invoking the Holocaust. So, and all the while he's doing what he's doing in Lebanon. Palestinians, this is from 20 minutes ago, Palestinians in Gaza targeted with more Israeli airstrikes. The people are affected by this anniversary because the war is still ongoing. Continuous Israeli air raids, and there are also continuous evacuation orders. The evacuations, they tell them to evacuate, move to a place of safety, and then they bomb that place of safety. And then they say, well, we had to because Hamas was there. So, particularly, you know, again, it's one of the reasons that I find it very difficult to absorb and protest the barbarity of everything that we see coming out of Israel, Palestine, Gaza, and now Lebanon. It's so difficult to process it, and it's something I don't particularly want to talk about because I do find it very difficult. But clearly, because of the severity of what's happening and the barbarity of what's happening, it's sort of impossible not to. So there's a particularly horrible statistic. At least 2.1 million people, or 96% of Gaza's population, are facing high levels of food insecurity, and in fact, people have already starved to death. Children, young kids, I've seen that. So there we go. And now, what I want to talk about with regards, now, just this quick little story. I don't know if you know this. Ireland's United Nations UN peacekeepers are sort of a permanent fixture in southern Lebanon. They act as observers for the UN, observing scuffles, outbreaks, or attacks, or whatever from Israel. And they're basically observers. So Ireland slams Israel's outrageous demands to its peacekeepers. Ireland has rejected Israel's calls for UN peacekeeping troops to withdraw from Lebanon, insisting it will not evacuate them, even as Israel has intensified its air campaign against the militant group Hezbollah. Irish President Michael D. Higgins slammed what he called outrageous threats against the peacekeepers from the Israel Defence Forces that sought to have them evacuate the villages they are defending. His intervention came days before Ireland's Prime Minister was due to visit the White House. Who cares? You should go to the White House. Shame on you. Shame on you. Ireland has 347 peacekeeping troops stationed in southern Lebanon as a part of a joint battalion with Polish soldiers. 2 of the 25 outposts on the Blue Line, in effect dividing Lebanon from Israel, and the Golan Heights are under Irish command. So, and now, I don't know if you've seen this, the local Lebanese down there, they speak English with an Irish accent. The Irish have been there that long. They actually speak English with an Irish accent. That's kind of fucking cool. I saw a video. I should have saved it for you. So it was like if I had a podcast to do, I'd remember to have done that. But so that's that. And then I wanted to show you this: Western Free Press in action. And the big thing again, little example I gave of it there a moment ago: Iranian-backed Hezbollah, and not US-backed Israel, in the Western media, legacy media, whatever you want to call it. Here's a little post from on Reddit. The Western Free Press in action. Doesn't it make you proud? A kill notification. This is called a D notice in the UK. And basically the government, or MI5, or whoever the fuck it is in charge of everything, can put out a D notice where you're not allowed to report a story. It's called a kill notice. Stuff that was the royal family. You know how you hear about these rumours about the royal family, and then it doesn't. You hear about these things, and then quite often it's because a D notice has been applied. Like the Prince Andrew story about him being a fucking raper, pedo, groomer, whatever it is that he is. That was all reported in America, and it leaked its way across here. That's why we know about it, because they don't have that sort of. Obviously, the British Secret Service can't do that over there. But this is an Associated Press alert: kill notification. Immediate action needed. Clients, please be advised the following story has been killed and should no longer be used. Story title: ISR troops. That's Israel, ISR. The date: 30th of September 2024. The reason for killing the story: the Israeli military censor has ordered the Associated Press to remove this video. Please delete from all platforms. You're receiving this email because the Associated Press is now serving notice of video kills to customers via an operational email. So the Israeli military censor is ordering the Associated Press to not report a story. And what was the story? The story in question was about the IOF troops, Israeli occupation forces, massing on Lebanon's southern border in preparation for the ground invasion, which is now in progress. And by the way, in which they got their fucking asses kicked, which is why they went back to bombing. It's all they can do. And then a little bit more on the media and the way they cover one side and the other. So you know that the excuse that all the Western media has been using, for the massive civilian casualties and the bombing of apartment blocks, hospitals, universities, schools, refugee camps, all infrastructure's all gone. The excuse that's given is because Hamas has been hiding among the civilian population. It's the most densely populated region on earth. There's no option to but be with, you can't hide. You can't just go and silo off a little area of yourself. Right? This is where Hamas are all over here. That's not the way this works. So here's a little piece of hypocrisy, particularly juicy piece of hypocrisy. Check it out.
U.S. intel view that among the targets were Israeli airfields, but also, and this is crucial, the headquarters of Mossad, the International Intelligence Service of Israel, which is inside Tel Aviv. It's in the northern part of Tel Aviv, but it's in the city. It's in a densely populated area. And of course, the concern is if you're firing, even though Iran might consider that a military target, it is in a densely populated city with civilians around it. And that's just one more layer of escalation. The U.S.
So Israel has built its airfields and its Mossad spying agency surrounded by civilian infrastructure, civilian population. Hamas lives in the Israel then bombs tower blocks, just killing hundreds of people at a time, and using as the excuse that Hamas or but if Iran go to do the same thing, which they didn't do, by the way, that attack that Iran made on Israel didn't kill a single. Actually, did. There was one person killed, and they were killed from fallen debris from an Iranian missile that was intercepted by the Iron Dome, so-called. And unfortunately, it was a Palestinian man. It's tragic enough. So, but Iran did only target in that missile barrage from last week all military targets and didn't kill any civilians. But they're being portrayed as if they did. Whereas Israel do that. They do it deliberately. We know they do it deliberately. You don't need to drop a £2,000 bomb on a refugee camp and load of people in tents, which is what they did again. They did it in Lebanon the other week whenever they killed the leader of Hezbollah. They dropped something I can't remember. A ridiculous, those £2,000 bunker buster bombs. They dropped like 60 of them or something like that. They slaughtered hundreds of people in order to get one or two. And those hundreds of people were civilians. Men, women, children, families. And they did it on purpose. Iran did its strike, which was a retaliation for that killing, for that attack. And they've said, we're done now. That's us. We've took our revenge. No more. You escalate this again, we will go. But it's being portrayed as the other thing. Iran attacks Israel. Iran retaliated against Israel. Again, this is a part of this double speak that goes on. Iran retaliated. Israel attacked. So there we go. And then I was going to read this article from Rebel News, but I'll maybe leave it till the next one. Now, I don't know if I should make you go through this. I really don't. Do you know who James Whale is? This is 11 minutes. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put it on and we will watch as much of it together as we can, which is only going to be a few minutes. So James O'Keefe is an ex... I think he's actually renounced his American citizenship. I'm not sure about that one. But I know he's an ex-Marine. And he goes on to James Whale's talk show on Talk TV. Talk TV, that's the Rupert Murdoch. Is it that one or is his Press TV? Anyway, it's his right-wing sort of relatively new media outlet in the UK. And James Whale is a particularly horrible arsehole. And James O'Keefe is very much outspoken, campaigner against American imperialism and others around the world anyway. But so he goes on as a guest, and this is excruciating. We're not going to play this all because I don't think... I did watch it, but because I watched it, I'm going to make you watch some of it. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. These are the rules, people. I didn't make them. I just work here.
Talk. Right, welcome back. This is the James Whale Show Unleashed tonight. A bit like Boris's book. I don't know why he nicked the title.
Well, because it's an homage, isn't it? It's a compliment. Take it as a compliment.
Yeah, maybe you're right. The Israeli military is expanding its operations on and around the anniversary of the appalling tragedy of October the 7th. As I said, I'm concerned about this country. We do not have any protection if they decide to come this way. We haven't got
We've got
dome
America
to protect us. No,
they'll come and help us like they did last time.
If Iran suddenly started firing bombs...
If Iran is coming... What the fuck are you talking about? If Iran is going to attack Britain,
Comes at us, we've got nothing to stop it. Vaguely.
Well, the Americans will do it.
Anyway, Kenneth O'Keefe, former US Marine, was fighting in the Gulf War and was on the programme a few months ago. Joins us again. He's just come back from America. Kenneth, you've got interesting views on all of this, I know. But how close do you think we are to the Third World War?
Well, I think when the history books are written, if we have any publishers or any books left, are going to say that we're already in it. And when you have impunity in a nuclear age, I've warned humanity about this now for over a decade. In fact, I made a film about it. Impunity in the nuclear age has taken us to World War III and Armageddon. It almost seems like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I would argue the best thing we could do to prevent that is to apply the law. And according to the law, the genocide charges against the Jewish state of Israel and the killing of heads of state and heads of movements is not something that is allowed by law. We have due process, it's been violated, and this is why we are now sitting on a Samson option reality.
They haven't hit heads of state, they've hit terrorist group heads who killed American Marines that you were. Murdered hundreds of Marines.
The use or threat of violence to enforce or to compel political action is the definition of terrorism. Ask the children of Gaza.
Themselves.
Ask the children of...
What was the pager attack? 3,000 pagers blowing up? What was that? Was that not terrorism? Again, hypocrisy in the Western media portrayed as a genius attack. No doubt it was particularly genius, but it was Dr. Evil genius. No one saw that one coming. If anyone else had done that, it's terrorism. Because Israel does it. It's genius.
Gaza, if they're terrorized, when they have F-16s.
Why haven't they been moved to Egypt like the Ukrainian children?
We are the terrorists. America,
why are they
Britain,
there,
and Israel.
the children? Why are the children not out in Egypt?
Calm down.
You won't answer that.
The children are wetting their beds at night. If it was your child who was wetting his bed at
children
night,
have left
you
Ukraine.
would have to tell them that, oh, I'm sorry, the terrorists are the reason why they're allowed to bomb you as a child.
You won't answer the question, will you? Because you've got no answer.
Shut up for a minute.
It's all right,
because
he's answered
you just
it.
shout. Shut up.
I'm not shouting, I'm just making a point there.
Will you please? You're not. You're just being stupid.
I've said the Ukrainian children aren't in Ukraine.
Are you going to fire him for real?
You can't answer it, can you?
I'm seriously going to fire him at one point.
It's all right, he's answered it by not answering.
Why have you suddenly, as an ex-Marine, become a fan of terrorists?
Right. So I am not a fan of terrorism. I've just defined it. The use of threat or violence to compel political action.
Yeah,
now,
that's just...
By that
happens to be whatever country
weapons of mass destruction, Iraq, 2 million dead. That was a lie.
So you
that
were a
was
terrorist.
terrorism.
You were a Marine.
We have Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State of the United States, who said, quote, 500,000 dead children was, quote, worth it. That's terrorism.
So you were a terrorist.
The United States has dropped Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the firebombing of Dresden. We can go on and on. Terrorism, by its legal definition, has not been prosecuted. That's called impunity, and it's because of impunity that we sit here today. And if, by the way, any of those nations which we have bombed and genocided and supplied the weapons to do that decide to come over here, well, how? What do you reckon? What do you reckon? Would you sit by and do nothing while your country was being bombed, while it was all based on lies, weapons of mass destruction, much? No, I would fight. By the way, the Palestinians are an occupied nation. Occupied, which means the occupying nation has a legal obligation. They've cut off air, water, food, in every way. Literally, when you're in a firestorm, there's no air left. You're burning
selling the aid
under the rubble. This is impunity in the nuclear age.
This is good.
World War III. Best we stop it.
You might as well go, because quite frankly, there's nothing else to say, because you actually would support terrorists and the enemies of freedom if they attacked us. You've just said it.
What is your definition of terrorism? Maybe I don't understand.
Well,
what is your definition of terrorism?
My definition of terrorism is what happened on October the 7th.
Wait, is there any other example?
I've got to give them to you.
Okay.
What happened to this country during our troubles with the IRA?
Okay.
That's terrorism. Bombs going off in the middle.
Innocent people.
In a war situation, sadly.
How about
and it's
Hiroshima
terrible.
and Nagasaki?
I wouldn't like... If
the firebombing of Dresden?
It stopped the war. It stopped the war.
Oh, wait.
It stopped the war.
Oh, but...
That's a war.
But what if it didn't? Would it have been terrorism?
No, what you're
Hitler would have won
rubbish.
then. Hitler would have won.
So if it stops a war, it's not terrorism, but if it doesn't stop a war, it is.
It's a...
Sorry, I'm going to make you watch all of this.
That sounds like the victor's right to history to me. Sounds like the British Empire, which invaded and occupied and genocided all over.
Well, when you were a Marine, were you a terrorist? You were working for terrorists by your definition.
I was a mercenary for the banksters until I woke up, got ahead, and actually started thinking with my heart.
I don't want you on the show anymore, mate. I'd like you to leave.
Yeah. Well, doesn't that just show what a coward
and the
you are?
reason I'm not a coward.
No, I
because
didn't get my 15 minutes this time, did I?
You don't like this country.
What are you talking about?
You don't like the history
I'm actually trying to
of this
preserve the
country.
values of a country that has Christian values and actually
I
does
don't want to
believe in
hear
law.
about religion.
Common law, British common law, the
Don't
Bill of
want to
Rights.
hear about
I've been
religion.
standing for that stuff over and over.
No, you're not.
What are you doing for the
You
Bill of
are
Rights? Free
standing-
speech and whatnot, trying to cut me off because you don't like what I say.
I've given you 7 or 8 minutes to spiel a load of
You didn't define
rubbish.
terrorism. You said October 7th, as if the world started on October
But
7th.
everybody knows what terrorism is.
Where's the evidence of the beheaded babies? Where's the evidence of the rape? Where is the evidence? Where is
the
any
United Nations, even
They
nations.
killed about 400 Israeli soldiers
somebody
that day.
who's not okay. I can't. There really is no point. These have all been shown. There was a BBC
The Nova
documentary
Festival,
about
what
it.
about that?
You said the BBC was the worst institution last time I was here.
Yeah,
The
so
BBC
now you're citing
showed
the
the
BBC.
I can't be bothered to have this argument.
What about the Nova Festival?
The
Did that happen?
BBC was rubbish last time I was here.
It's just avoiding.
But now you're citing the
It's no
BBC.
point.
I
Might
do
as well
not
go.
want to do a programme that starts off with shouting. Because nobody gets anywhere. And you are an angry man. And I can be angry, but I'm trying to actually make people like you see the truth.
I gave you a definition of terrorism, which
But
is
I don't
according to
agree.
Black's Law
I don't
Dictionary.
agree with it, and I'm going to tell you
That's
why.
English law. Okay.
I don't agree with it. Law can be made to say whatever it wants, and some of our laws need to be changed. We're being invaded by people in rubber boats, and we're just letting them come in this country. We don't know what they're going to do. And now,
Again, this is what I'm talking about. It started with this, didn't we? Started with this. They're coming here because we're fucking bombing the shit out of them. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
does that make me a racist? I was described last week on the show as an anti-white knuckle dragger by some nutter as well. So, you know, one hand I'm a racist, one hand I'm anti-white. I must be right in the middle. Terrorism is when you go after unarmed people without
Civilians.
having a war, civilians. And
Do you not
that is
think
what
that
happens. In a war, unfortunately, you do get collateral damage. And during the Second and First World Wars, there were very, very many people who were innocent and not involved who were sadly killed. But that is what a war does. Terrorism, if you like, I suppose, is a war situation that nobody has declared war on anybody else. But to go and put bombs in the middle of a shopping centre or in a pub, or to walk into a town in a country and exterminate the men, women and children, and then people say, well, I think it was a good idea, and quite frankly, the
and there were no
Israelis
rights.
deserved
There was none of
is
that,
not right. Now, if you want to save this world, first of all, get rid of Christian values and Muslim values and all the bloody stupid religion that there is inflicting itself on this planet, because it doesn't have any foot in reality.
Are you an atheist, James? Or?
Oh no, I don't think so.
No.
I mean, we could be run by aliens. Who knows? Nobody knows. But I definitely don't believe any of the religious rubbish that is written in
God?
books. What
Do you
God?
reject the
a
creator?
I think nature is the creative force, yeah.
Okay.
And I think nature created it, and you know, probably on other planets it's been created as well, who knows. But that's a whole different story.
Well, I'll be the first one to agree with you on fake Christians and fake Muslims who deny the idea that there would be any
You
ultimate
think there's
judgment.
a God?
Well, listen.
Why would a God let a planet get into a situation
I do.
like this?
If you allow me to explain, I will answer. Now, I did not just accept God, period. I was raised Catholic, but I saw the hypocrisy of the church. I saw the raping of choir boys by bishops and cardinals. And I did not have such a foolishness that I rejected God. What I did was I rejected the church.
Right.
Now, over the course of decades
So
of
who is
testing
God?
my beliefs
Where is God?
and putting my humanitarian values on the line and staking my life on my values over and over, yes, I did come to know God in a way that was so
And who
profound that
is
I
God?
literally
What
came
is
back
God?
from the dead.
What is God?
The original source, the
You
beginning
literally didn't
point,
come back from the
beginning
dead.
point.
Yeah, where? Is it a
I
man,
was
a
clinically
woman,
dead
a
with
being?
multiple witnesses.
Yeah,
So
you
if you
weren't
want to
dead.
say I didn't come
You
back
weren't
from
dead.
the dead,
You weren't
I wasn't
dead.
there. I had witnesses who were there, who checked
So
my
you're
like
pulse, who
Jesus.
saw me not
You're
breathing,
resurrected.
white as a sheet, came back from the dead, because I ain't done with my work
think
yet. And
you're
my
Jesus
work
or
is
something?
to end terrorism and to end impunity
Yeah.
so that we can
And
hand
how are
this
you gonna
world
do
over
that?
to our children,
How are
God
you-
or not.
How are you going to do it?
by enacting an understanding of truth to effect lawful, peaceful remedy through the Bill of Rights of the United Kingdom, which has a Bill of Rights and common law, no injury, no crime. Also, the U.S. Constitution I took an oath to protect and defend.
How are you going to achieve that? What are you going to do?
The truth is the first step. Once you know the truth, you can have lawful procedures like in a court of law where you provide evidence. So getting back to what you said, all of the schools...
Sorry, what?
All of the schools,
I'm a bit stupid, so don't go too
all of
fast.
The schools in Gaza are gone. The hospitals are gone. They've all been bombed.
Don't use them as
that would
military
qualify
bases,
as terrorism. And the Fort Geneva Convention also makes these protected sites...
So there again, the first don't use them as military bases. Well, they didn't. But, you know... Then these two fucking clowns, well then, I can't watch any more of this. It's driving me fucking mental. Right, I made it 10 minutes. There's only a minute left. Oh, fuck! Right, we're going for it. Take a breath, we're going in.
Civilians.
Wind back.
You don't like the laws when it's not on your side,
Ash,
do you?
Just a minute.
So the solution...
How are you going to do this? That's the question I've asked.
Tony Blair and George Bush need to be in the dock for war crimes for the invasion. Listen, if there's no consequence, that's the way.
How are you going to bring it? How are you going to do it?
The evidence and people moving forward understanding of law.
You're supporting terrorist, violent organizations.
No, I'm not.
I'm
fighting against terrorism.
Fighting is the word you're
using. And I'm using the legal definition of terrorism to justify what I am fighting.
So would you use violence to try and make this point?
No,
Never?
only self-defense. Self-defense, yes.
Like Israel doing.
Yes, I would defend myself. Israel is an occupying power. Once again, we get back to law. According to the law, they can't cut off the food,
you don't want to answer my questions, do you?
Everything.
You don't want to answer my questions.
20,000 dead kids. Remember, collateral damage.
Let's go back to my first question. Why are women and children there? They're not in Ukraine because they've gone to safety.
Kids? If your kids were blown
why are the women and children in there and when they're not in Ukraine? Why haven't they
Do you have children? Do you have children?
Understand that they are locked in a prison?
Well,
and all the so-called safe zones are not safe.
They've got hundreds of tunnels to Egypt.
They have nowhere to go.
Do you have children?
They do not have open ticket to Egypt.
Egypt could let them
get out.
Guys, take a break. I've had enough.
Oh, fucking hell, that was tough. Woo! Oh, I struggled with that. I struggled with that. Bet you did too. Oh my God. What a couple of fuckers. So much of that, and every fucking word that was coming out of those dickheads' mouths was just fucking utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Oh, whew. I have to go and have a lay down. Right, there we go. That's me done. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully for the next one, I know I keep saying it, I'm going to keep trying to get people in, and it's just... my time isn't my own. I just don't have the time to organise these things properly. Does anybody want to do that for me? It would be fucking great. So I'm going to hopefully have Paddy McNichol in soon, and we'll talk a bit more about what's going on here in our wee part of the world. And yeah, so there we go. Don't forget, you can support the podcast over on Patreon for £1 a month. We get the videos and the audio all ad-free uploaded there, and you can download them at your discretion or listen to them on Patreon itself. And you can download these and listen to them on all the places that you get podcasts. Yeah, go check it out. It's good crack. Bye.